Rempel Gardner.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with questions to Mr. Parton. Mr. Parton, in early September of this year, you were cited in a news article where you gave a quote that said, "You bring TFWs in for 50% wage and outbid employers who have been supporting apprenticeships, investing in Canadians to train the next generation of construction workers. You lose out on the bid because you're not competitive anymore." So this committee often hears testimony that we need to sustain the high levels of immigration that Canada has seen over the last several years. But I find that incongruent with data that shows that we have a serious youth jobs crisis. Can you expand on the statement that you made and talk about why it is important to scrap the TFW program and perhaps why it's more important to be training Canadian youth and looking at productivity measures within and incenting productivity measures within industry rather than relying on immigration to address some of these gaps?
Well, it is, yeah, absolutely. So when I said, $10.44, that's ERSD's model or wage that they think an iron worker's worth. Certainly in our union, it's upwards of probably it's in the 50%, 45 to 50% higher wage bracket. I would talk about in the last 12 months the work that my local's done, specifically in attracting young Canadians, young ladies, and young fellas to come in what we called boot camp, where they'd spend 2 to 3 weeks, kind of a pre-apprentice type, earn while you learn. Of that, we ran 140 young ladies through and young men through. 102 are still with us. It was an 80% retention rate. All of those young people have out to work for $30 an hour as a starting wage, and they all entered into the apprenticeship. And when we talk about temporary foreign workers, I think the median wage for them was in ironworking was $30 to $31 an hour. Well, why would I, as a young person, start out at the 30? If that was the top wage I'm going to get as a journey person after taking all this training, why would I even enter the trade when I could, go to Tim Hortons?
Can I interject just for time? So there's a canard, or there's a bit of a fallacy, I think, that, or there's this perception that high levels of temporary foreign workers, whether they come in through the traditional TFW stream or in unsustainable levels through student permits, that they don't take first job opportunities from Canadian youth. Do you think that statement is true, or have what you've seen in your union, does it actually show the opposite, that it actually in fact does take opportunities from Canadian youth?
It does. It cuts the legs out from underneath the apprenticeship system as well. In 4 to 5 years ago, 80% of all the TFW ironworkers came to BC. It was statistically impossible that somehow British Columbia was living in the Goldilocks zone. It became a business model of low wages. And when you're paying low wages, say in Burnaby, the city of Burnaby, if you Google it right now and say, well, what do I need to afford rent in the city of Burnaby? It's about $42 an hour. So not only were we undercutting wages for everyday working Canadians, we were also doing a disservice to the TFWs as well.
So just to be clear, you would advise the committee to recommend to the government to scrap the TFW program and reduce other forms of temporary work permits in lieu of perhaps focusing more on apprenticeship training and securing opportunities for Canadian youth. Is that correct?
Yeah, again, I'd go back to my recommendations.
Thank you. With the time I have left, I'm going to go to Mr. Copeland. You talked a bit about the Danish model and the need for integration. It's sometimes a taboo topic, but I think we are starting to see a loss of cultural cohesion in Canada. We have to be very sensitive about how we talk about that so that we're not, eroding Canada's pluralism through the discussion. But we also can't assume that Canada's pluralism is going to be maintained without having the discussion in a structured way. So you talked about the Danish model.
1 minute.
With the time I have left, could you give a few recommendations to the committee, and then also would you be willing to put in additional written recommendations on how to achieve the integration that you talked about in your remarks?
Yeah, certainly I'd be happy to provide additional written recommendations. And I would agree that it's a very fine line to trot. And when I think about integration, certainly we have to ensure that there are responsibility and duties out on the part of immigrants, but we also need to provide adequate support. And I think the Danish model is interesting in that it makes the receipt of certain benefits for both temporary classes and then permanent residents conditional upon certain things. So for temporary, they actually have to demonstrate their own capacity to provide for benefits of various types, so social services, healthcare, what have you, and for long-term permanent status, they need to demonstrate consistent labor market participation and civic literacy and language acquisition. So these are things. Denmark is a country with an integration act. There are a number of other countries like Canada, peer nations like Netherlands and Germany that have things like this. I think it's something we should look to incorporate into perhaps our Multiculturalism Act or
Thank you, Mr.
Citizenship.
Copeland.